Hi everyone, Namaste, Hare Krishna. Okay, it's time and we'll make a start. Just a minute. All right. Welcome to today's session. We'll be dealing with the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita today. And like always, I request your blessings and prayers so that whatever I may say today should be in accordance with what Lord Krishna had instructed to Arjuna 5,000 years back. And it is in accordance with what the Guru Parampara or the lineage of gurus in the Indian traditional system have been instructing. So I request for your prayers so that this may be so. And I'm going to chant a series of verses or shlokas. I request you all to pray with me. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utpadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. Thank you all and let's make a start. So what we studied in the last session was something called Dhyana Yoga. Okay. Dhyana essentially means meditation as a means of mind control. But dhyana in Sanskrit is just, meditation is just a component of the 8-limbed yoga system. So yoga itself, there are different types of yoga, and one among it is called Ashtanga yoga, meaning the 8-limbed yoga system. Okay. And there are 8 steps in this yoga system. Does anybody want to tell me what are those 8 steps? To quickly recap in the chat box. Okay. The first 2 steps, I can give you a hint. The first 2 steps are called yama and niyama. So these are some prescribed rules and regulations, do's and don'ts for somebody to be able to practice this yoga system, right? The 8-limbed yoga system. And some of the do's include honesty and integrity, and that's not on the slide. So this was in the previous session. There's honesty, integrity, not stealing, basic righteousness. And don'ts are just opposite of that. One of the requirements of the 8-limbed yoga system is celibacy. Okay. And you're required to go and find a secluded place without distractions, away from people. So these are some of the requirements to practice the 8-limbed yoga system. Okay. And the third limb is asana. That is what most of us know as yoga, some postures in order to control the mind. It's one of the components. It's not yoga itself. So after asana, you have pranayama, which is a type of different techniques of breath control. And then after one masters body control and breath control, having been able to stay in a certain posture with a certain breathing pattern for several hours. When they perfect that, only then can they get to the next step, which is called pratyahara, which means withdrawing the senses. So usually the senses that we have, be it, the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, they're all always after experiencing something. So the eyes want to see, the ears want to keep hearing, right? The nose wants some aromatic, pleasant smells. So pratyahara is a technique that you attain after you've mastered the asana, the breath control, and you follow the regulative principles. So you are able to withdraw your senses by will. So you are able to control your senses without having to put in too much effort. So that stage is pratyahara. Then you have dharana, which is called, steadiness or steadfastness. When you put your mind to something, you're able to focus. That is dharana. And then dhyana is meditation. Single pointed focus on one particular thought that you want to focus on. That is dhyana. And the final stage is called samadhi. Samadhi essentially means integration or union. So God has said in multiple chapters in the Bhagavad Gita that I reside in your heart as Paramatma. And we are souls or Jivatmas. And God resides with us in our hearts as Super Soul or Paramatma. So when a person reaches the stage of Samadhi, he is able to experience this union or the presence of Paramatma within. That's the final or penultimate stage of the 8-limbed yoga system. But this is quite difficult for this particular age of Kali Yuga, because first, so difficult to find a secluded place, and then difficult to survive in that secluded place because we have no survival skills. Basically, we need everything served on the platter, right? And you need to practice celibacy, which might be a big challenge for a lot of people. And that kind of single-pointed focus takes years and years of practice. Each step can take several years, sometimes several lifetimes. So it's not recommended for this period. So we saw in the last session that the recommended technique for this Kali Yuga is which kind of yoga practice? Among Dhyana Yoga, Jnana Yoga. In the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the chapter itself is titled as Sankhya Yoga or Jnana Yoga, which is empirical knowledge. So it is based on this hidden trial method. You have a question, does God exist? You try to answer it with proofs and your own investigations, experiments. You go on and on with other questions. So that is called Sankhya Yoga. That is one of the methods of God realization. Meditation or Dhyana Yoga is one of the methods, which is a component of the 8-limbed yoga system. Okay. Then we have Karma Yoga, where you dedicate all your actions and the results of it to God. Okay, that's another technique of God realization. And then you have Bhakti Yoga. Among all of these, which is the most recommended technique for this yoga? Can you put it in the chat box, please? Prashant, your answer is perfectly right. These are the 8 limbs of the yoga system. Yep. Perfect. It is Bhakti Yoga, devotional service, right? Experiencing union with God in devotional service is what is recommended. All right. So the last chapter we saw in Dhyana Yoga, the acronym was ears. Okay. So the mind can either be our best friend or the worst enemy. Okay. Depending on how much we are able to befriend it. Okay. So if the mind is a friend, what are the results? We're able to make progressive and healthy decisions. We are free from slavery to the mind. But if it's an enemy, it's the worst case scenario. Okay. We'll further entangle ourselves. We'll not be able to progress in spiritual life and we will have unfavorable desires. That's what is given here, right? Then we saw about the Ashtanga yoga system. We just discussed that. Okay. And then what happens if a person starts with the process of Ashtanga yoga, right? But he fails to reach the penultimate stage of Samadhi. There, unlike our material education, like if we complete schooling, university, or even get a doctorate or postdoc, nobody can guarantee us and assure us that next life, once we're born with that PhD in our hands and we proceed to postdoc next. That never happens, isn't it? But with yoga and with spiritual knowledge in the Indian system, we have an assurance in our scriptures that in our next lifetime, whatever spiritual progress we have made in this lifetime, we're going to start a level after that. So this knowledge continues with us because it's not related to the body, it's related to the soul. It comes with the soul in progressive lifetimes with us. So if a person happens to not be able to complete the yoga system, the Ashtanga yoga system, then Lord Krishna gives an assurance that he will continue from the step that he is in the next lifetime. If somebody has stopped with mastering the postures in this lifetime, let's say asana, in the next life, he will be able to proceed from the breath control and further steps. So that's how it is. So nobody essentially is a failure. Everybody has a chance to continue. So that's the what God assures. And then among all of the paths, we saw that Bhakti Yoga is the best. Okay, so we've had quite a long overview of yesterday's session. Now let's see what we're going to learn today. Okay. What are the features of this eternal knowledge? How do we become experts in this eternal knowledge that I'm talking about, which continues with lifetimes? That's what this knowledge of the absolute is what's discussed in the 7th chapter, and the acronym is HEAD. Okay, HEAD. So H stands for hearing. What's the role of hearing in acquiring eternal knowledge? The chapter begins with that. And then we have everywhere and essence. We'll see what this means. We develop a sense of equal vision, which we have already discussed before. Okay, that's also coming in the 7th chapter. And then what do we accept and reject? And what do we mean by demigods? In eternal knowledge, what do we accept and reject? Okay, what do we mean by demigods? So we're going to discuss this in this chapter. So what do you understand by hearing? What is hearing? What is hearing?
Vibrations.
Okay, can I please have your responses? What do we mean by hearing? It might seem like a very elementary question, but it's very profound in this chapter. Okay, Deeptanshu, what do you think?
Hearing means what your ear perceives.
Okay.
And for me, I think the way I look at hearing is what you are willing to actually absorb. So there are a lot of things which one can hear.
Yes.
So right now,
yeah,
I can hear the sound of wind as well as the piano.
Yeah.
Focusing on this.
Right. Perfect. Thank you. So our ears are capable of hearing a lot of sounds. At this point in time, like Diptanshu said, we are hearing a piano in the background. There's wind. I am talking, right? So all these sounds are there. But what we choose to perceive is up to us, isn't it? We choose to focus on something. So hearing is not just a process of sound or vibration entering your ears. It's something that you consciously choose to perceive, right? So the mind is involved in this process, and you're conscious and you're aware of the sound, isn't it? Your consciousness is involved as well. So how do we become eligible to actually be able to perceive this eternal knowledge? How to understand Lord Krishna or God's message, right? How do we actually hear it? It's important that, when we have a conference or when we have somebody coming to talk, it's good to know about the speaker, isn't it? Beforehand, before you attend a lecture, it's good to know about the speaker. Similarly, before we hear something that God has said, such as the Bhagavad Gita, it's good to meditate for a while about him, about Lord Krishna and his form, because he is the one who has spoken the Bhagavad Gita. Okay. Eternal knowledge, unlike material knowledge, cannot be, perceived or transmitted just like that. Somebody can teach you and tell you that, yes, you are the soul, you are not this body, and you can accept it. But it takes inner realization for you to actually experience it. And that realization does not come just by word, right? Or just by hearing. So it takes the presence and the guidance of a guru who's qualified enough and who has experienced it himself for you to be able to experience it. And this eternal knowledge reveals itself. It might be difficult to understand, but it reveals itself from the heart. It's not something that can be transmitted entirely. So, with the grace and the presence of a guru and the blessings of God, it will reveal itself. All right. And this particular knowledge is very rare. Very few people, there is description in the Bhagavad Gita itself in further chapters. Among crores and crores of people, there could be a few hundreds who are interested to know what this eternal knowledge is. Among those hundreds, there would be a few tens who might be interested to go study it. And among the 10 people that study, it is one person that is able to actually get this inner realization. So it's a very rare knowledge, right? And very few people get the opportunity to even know about it. Okay. So what does Lord Krishna says? Lord Krishna say, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Maya Saktamanah Partha Yogam Yunjanmadashrayah Asamshayam Samagram Mam Yatha Gnasyasi Tatshrunu. So now hear, O son of Pritha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, now hear, O son of Pritha, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. Okay. So if you want to know about a person, you might read several books about him or her, but it's nothing similar to knowing the person in experience or knowing them, personally or befriending them, right? So if you want to know about Lord Krishna or God in entirety, how is that possible? Through the practice of yoga in full consciousness of me. So while we're practicing this yoga techniques, different types of yoga, like we mentioned before, it's essential that all the time our mind is focused towards, our consciousness is focused towards God and his activities. So if we are able to do that, we the mind becomes attached to God and we are able to know about him in entirety, right? The knowledge is not incomplete, it's complete knowledge. So what are the three processes of gaining knowledge? This is a general way, and these three processes are described in the entire scriptures, Indian scriptures that we have. So the first method of gaining knowledge is pratyaksha pramana, meaning through direct perception. Okay, you directly see, experience, and you get that knowledge. So that is direct perception. The second method is through anumana pramanam. When you do not know something, you guess or you make a hypothesis that it could be this, and logically you come at a conclusion whether it is matching with your hypothesis or not. So anumana pramanam is also part of the scriptures. This is hypothesis and logic. And finally, you have shabda pramanam. Okay, shabda means sound in Sanskrit, but shabda pramanam is essentially deductive knowledge, where you deduce something out of the knowledge that you have. Also, shabda pramanam is something that you hear from your teachers or people who are experienced, and you deduce this knowledge, learn this from them without direct perception. So that is shabda pramanam. These are three types, three processes of gaining knowledge. So I just have a question for you all. Among these three processes, if you would like to know about God, which do you think is the most practical method? If you want to know about God, among these three processes of gaining knowledge, which one do you think is the best or the most practical? Can I please have your responses in the chat box? Kartikeya and Nishant are saying it's through deductive knowledge or through Shabda Praman. Okay. Pooja is saying Shabda. Great. Why not direct perception? Shachi is also saying Shabda Praman. And please do feel free to come on video. It'll be nice to see how you're able to process the information that I'm mentioning. Okay. So why nobody? Okay, why not direct perception? Because we can't see them. And why can't we see? Why can't we see God? Why can't we see God? I think I've discussed this before. It's not something very new. Why do you think, Diptanshu, we can't see God?
Was this discussed in the first couple of classes?
Yes.
Um,
How can you see someone who doesn't have any form, is what Prashant is saying. It's a very big debate, this question that you've just asked. And a lot of Indian philosophers also had this, okay? The people who followed the Sankhya Yoga system or the empirical system, they had this question, does God have a form or not? Okay, and they tried to deduce different things from that.
the only thing I can say is
Yeah. Yeah.
can't see air still exists. So,
Mm.
still anything is God resides in our heart.
Mm.
We don't know that. We can't see our own heart.
Mm.
We feel our heart. We have to feel the existence of God. Something that's
Right.
very sensible. And the other
Right.
senses, in my case, at least I can say, this is my the knowledge that I've derived from my life, or the way it's gone so far.
Mhm.
You might lose a sense, but you still will be able to feel God. That doesn't go away. Like I can stop seeing, but I can still feel God. I can stop hearing, I
Yeah.
can still feel God.
Okay.
It's not dependent on the sense.
Right. So Diptanshu had a nice explanation. So we can't see everything with the senses that we have, isn't it? Our senses have a lot, I mean, our senses are limited. They have a lot of restrictions. They have only certain capabilities. So we can't expand beyond that. We need external help. Like I mentioned, with a compound microscope, you can't expect to see mitochondria, isn't it? So those who are not biologists, just ignore the example. So you can't expect to do that with limited sense. Similarly, God is not perceptible with these limited senses that we have in the human body. But when we transcend beyond the human body, when God wills Himself to reveal Himself to us, then we can see Him. Okay. And there is this beautiful creation around us, this beautiful terrain on earth. Okay. And in our scriptures, it's believed that there are several universes. It's not just one universe. There are several universes with millions of living entities. And it's said that there are 8.4 million species of living entities in different universes. So, can this entire creation exists and we know the existence of at least the earth? Okay. So is it possible that a creation can exist without a creator? Right? Is it possible? Can I have your answers? No. So it's not possible for a creation to exist without a creator. And this creator cannot be formless. Okay, cannot be formless. And there are very good examples in the Bhagavad Gita for this. We will see about that. I don't want to reveal it to you just now. Okay, so we'll see that in the further chapters. So first thing is hearing. Okay, in this eternal knowledge, the first thing is to hear God. Before hearing, the prerequisite is that we try to at least know something about the speaker. So we need to, as such, we can read about him. But if we meditate, because he resides in our heart, few things get revealed to us. Okay, and we can meditate on him before hearing about God himself or his words. Okay, and then what does E stands for? E stands for seeing Krishna, seeing God everywhere. Okay. Everywhere, and knowing that He's the essence of everything that exists. Okay. Right. It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita in the 7th chapter, from 8th to 12th shlokas, that Krishna is the essence and cause of everything. The entire creation is the product of his desire and his thoughts and his energies. Okay. So Krishna is the essence and cause of everything. And like I mentioned, Krishna resides in everybody's heart, in every single living entity's heart as Paramatma. So when you are able to realize this yourself, this knowledge and realization expands further. So when you get this realization, when you look at other living entities, you do not look at them as human beings or animals or plants. They're all living entities. You look at them as Paramatma or as super soul residing within their heart, so that your vision becomes equal. you are able to feel that inside your heart there is the presence of super soul. Similarly, in every other living entity that you look at, you're able to visualize the presence of God as super soul. So that is the kind of equal vision that we get with the eternal knowledge. Okay, so that's a feature of eternal knowledge. And we have seen that in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, there are 3 doers, right? There are 3 doers, and that's on the slide here. It's Ishvara, Jiva, and Prakriti. Okay, Jiva is us, the soul. Okay, Ishvara is God or the super soul, and Prakriti is material nature. Okay, so what's the relationship between Jiva, Ishvara, and Prakriti? Do you all remember the flow chart that we saw? Okay, Karthik is nodding his head. So what's the relationship between Jiva, Ishvara, and Prakriti?
That is the class soul, super soul, and
Soul, super soul, and material nature. What's the relationship between the 3?
super soul resides in a body, in a soul.
What?
Something like
Super soul resides in the heart.
heart, yeah.
Okay. And heart does not mean the physical heart that we think of. Okay. Heart means, in Sanskrit, heart means the area where Paramatma resides. Okay. With us. So we will understand this. Don't think of heart as the 3-dimensional heart and what we study in anatomy. It's not that. Okay. Yeah, so that's what I told you exactly. Do not think of it like that. Yeah. So the relationship between Ishvara, Jiva, and Prakriti is we as the soul desire. Okay. But we have done past deeds, which may be good or bad. So we have an account, karmic account, okay, where we have merits and we have a few demerits, let's say. Okay. So we desire something. God decides whether we have enough credit to sanction our desire. Okay. So if we have enough credit, our desires are sanctioned by God and they are manifested or carried out under God's direction through material nature. So Prakriti or material nature is believed to be subordinate to God. She works under him. And depending on our credit of karmas, God instructs material nature to either fulfill our desires or to not fulfill it. So that's the relationship between Jiva, Ishvara, and Prakriti. Jiva or soul desires, Ishvara or super soul sanctions, Prakriti or material nature carries out or fulfills the desire based on the super soul's instructions, right? So who is this super soul? The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, or any God that you believe in. You can think that this God expands as the super soul, is present with everybody and sanctions our desires. And he's also a witness of everything that happens in each and every lifetime that we go through. Okay. So, Shakti of the Shaktiman. So what does this thing mean? Shakti in the Indian languages and Sanskrit means energy. Okay. Energy of the energetic. So who possesses this energy? God possesses this energy. And the energy of the energetic, what does this mean? So let's see. Bhumirapo nalo vayu khammano buddhirevacha ahankara iti yamme bhinna prakritirashtadha. So earth, water, fire, air, ether. So these are the 5 material elements with which the gross body that we can perceive is made up of. Okay. And then we have the subtle body, which consists of the mind, intelligence, and false ego. Okay. And all of these together, the gross and the subtle bodies, they together constitute my separated material energies. Okay. So God is said to have material energy, and part of this material energy is also material nature. And our bodies are separated material energies, right? So it's believed that we are all components of God's energy, but at this moment we are separated from the whole energy as a whole. Okay, we are separated material energies and our bodies are also functioning because of the presence of this material energy only, right? So the endeavor that we have to pursue as, as the soul having a human body is to get back or merge with the original complete energy. That's what is believed in our scriptures. So what is the true nature of the soul? What is the true nature of the soul? Let's see. The jiva means soul. So apareyam itastvanyam prakritim vidhi me param jiva bhutam mahabaho yayedam dharyate jagat. Besides these, O mighty armed Arjuna, there is another superior energy of mine, which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. Okay. So God is believed to have two types of energies, material energy and spiritual energy. Okay. So material energy, so we are actually detached parts of the spiritual energy of God. Okay. But now we are exploiting this material and inferior nature. We are believed not to belong to this world. Okay. It is said that we do not belong to this world. This material world is called Dukkhalayam Ashashvatam, meaning it's an abode of miseries. So we cannot expect to have eternal happiness or permanent experiences in this material universe. It is destined, or it's the nature of this material world, this planet, that we get temporary bouts of happiness and distress. It is the nature of this place. So we cannot expect to have eternal bliss. But the place that we come from originally, the spiritual world, is said to have this kind of permanent happiness, okay, that stays. So we don't belong here. Where we belong is part of the material nature, which is considered to be inferior to the spiritual energy. But are so much under the influence of this illusion here, that this temporary happiness that we get is the actual permanent happiness that we have experienced before in the spiritual world, and we keep hankering for this temporary happiness, right? So because we are under the spell of material illusory energy called Maya. Okay. So this might be confusing to when you're hearing for the first time, so don't worry about it. We will keep hearing about it further. Okay. So what is the takeaway from this discussion? Okay. Where does the taste in water, the light of the sun, the sound in ether, the different skills and abilities in men, the intelligence, what's the actual source of all of this? It cannot be sourceless, isn't it? There has to be some kind of source from where these arise. These are all forms, different forms of energy. One is light, one is sound, okay? One is, perception. So these are all possible only because of the energy that comes from the supreme source, okay, which is believed to be God, the essence of everything. So the unseen is proven by the seen. So how is all this related? O conqueror of wealth, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. So how the thread forms a framework on the pearls. Similarly, God, without God's presence, nothing can exist. He holds everything like a foundation together, and through his energies, everything is able to function the way we know of it, right? So when somebody tells all these things, God exists, God has a form, he is the cause of all causes, it might seem very, to some people, maybe to a large extent, it might feel like it's all imaginary or it's all evidenceless. It's just claims that someone's making, right? So there are two choices that we have. We can either accept it or reject it, right? Depending on what kind of approach we have, whether we're looking for evidences, whether we just accept it. There's different methods how we can go about this. Hi there. So sorry. Yeah. So there are different types of people. Okay. So some of them never surrender. Okay. 4 do surrender. Okay. Maybe probably I've made a mistake with the slide. There are some people who never want to accept it. Okay. So they never surrender. Some people do surrender. Some people are jnani, empiricists. They try to find evidence. They try to do their own experimentation and then, accept or reject. And then there is a devotee who completely depends on Shabda Pramana or deductive knowledge that is coming from someone, coming from a lineage of people that have experienced what is God and then taking that knowledge from them unaltered without trying to influence it, experiment it, because they have done their experiments and then given the conclusions. It is very wise to accept those conclusions. You don't have to say that if you say, I don't know what's the experiment. Let me think of an experiment.
Gravity.
No, not gravity is not an experiment. Right. We can experience it. So let's say, cathode ray tube experiment. One of the scientists did that experiment. Okay. If somebody says that he wrote down his conclusions and published it and it's accepted. But if someone says that I will not accept this experiment unless I do it myself, what do you think? Is it wise or is it waste of time? It is tedious. It's not what to say, condemned. Of course, if someone wants to repeat the experiment, they can. But when something has proof and it has been accepted then by intelligentsia, and it's very wise to take it as such, right? Such a person is considered to be a devotee. So we have less than a minute. We're going to leave this meeting and rejoin. Then we'll have a quiz. We're towards the end of the PowerPoint anyway. So I'm going to end the meeting. I request everyone to rejoin.